key is to detach and just let it go. It's so with the gunas as well. So in order to be here with what's here now, you just have to let go of the last moment. That's it. You see? Yeah. But the last moment seems to persist. It seems to want to have some hold over us. So you actually have to really let it go. Like sometimes just stop, be present, and then start again. That's the beginning anew. Yes? It's true with everything here. And that's the discussion today in Geeta as well. Okay, let's repeat or chant the Geeta Dhyanam. Om. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. You know, we can learn from the past, but we can't hold on to it. It's even holding on to it for a moment, you see we can't be here now. So this is where we pick up this relationship with the gunas, having come to some understanding of the gunas and the ability to see the gunas at play within us, within our own mind, within our own nature, and the ability to release and to uplift, to shift, right? We came back to this, and these were the two sutras from yesterday, shlokas. When the seer beholds no agent other than the guna and knows that which is higher than the guna, he attains to my being. So here's Swami Shivananda, when he's, those last two words, when he's saying, here's Swami Shivananda, when he's saying detach, attach, right? It's detach, recognize the gunas, detach from the gunas and attach to that which is higher. And he attains to my being. The embodied one, having crossed beyond the three gunas, called gunatita, out of which this body is evolved, is free from birth, death, decay, and pain, and attains to immortality. And then we continue in the vein this morning. Arjuna asks a question, and it's a question that he asked several chapters ago as well. He says, Arjuna said, what are the marks of him who has crossed over the three qualities, O Lord? What is his conduct, and how does he go beyond these three qualities? The Blessed Lord said, light, activity, and delusion. So we remember those are the three gunas, right? Light is sattva, activity, rajas, delusion. When they are present, O Arjuna, he hates them not, nor does he long for them when they are absent. He who, seated like one unconcerned, is not moved by the qualities, and who, knowing that the qualities are active, is self-centered and moves not. And here's the concept, is agunatita. Yes. Seated like one unconcerned, as they play out. in our own psyche, but in our own psyche we have some fair amount of ability to control because of the relationship between the self and this inner self. Remember the permitter. So it's possible to permit or not to permit. You see, it's possible to, when one guna is beginning to arise, tamas is beginning to arise, can you shake it off if you shake it off early?
Yes.
You can say, okay. So it's not saying, certainly unconcerned, but it's not saying uninvolved. Okay. Now, what does Swamiji says? Swamiji says, here again we should remember we cannot sail in paper boats. Krishna's approach is entirely scientific. First, there is the theoretical exposition of a principle which has been done. Second, there is the model, the exemplar, the illustration of that principle. And then practice, the model in real life, the application of the principle. And that's where we come in. That's where we come in. Can you recognize the ideal? Can we speak to the ideal that's being pointed to here? So in your life, and life is your practice. What happens to you, you could call life. What you choose is your practice. Does that make sense? So we say practice, we're practicing, and this is what it relates to. So something happens and then practice. So what's the ideal? Shivadas, what's the ideal?
Transcendent goodness.
Well, what does that look like?
It looks like tranquility, it looks like peace, serenity.
So somebody calls you a terrible person, and?
Forgiveness.
What's the ideal?
The ideal is peace.
So look at the ideal inside and outside both and speak to them specifically. So what's the ideal inside when someone calls you something that you think is bad?
Forgiveness.
Undisturbed. Looks like undisturbed is the ideal. Now, short of the ideal, when the disturbance comes, then you need to come to forgiveness, right? Okay. And that's a practice that helps you to reach the ideal. The ideal is someone calls me a donkey. It's just vibration.
Yeah, just sound.
Just sound. Okay. Outside, what's the ideal?
You get stuck on the train and it pulls you with?
What's the ideal? How do you want to see yourself? Outside, when someone does a thing.
Unresponsive, non-reactive.
Non-reactive outside. Non-reaction. You never want to react, you always want to act. That's the ideal. Does that make sense? Yeah. So never acting because of the thing that happened, acting in concert with the thing that happened in a way that brings upliftment. Dancing with it. Flowing with it. So recognizing it. Yes? I remember when, I'll bring some commentary by Swami Chinmayananda too. I remember when I was first, quote unquote, getting into yoga, and samadhi seems such a mysterious term. So many people in practicing yoga say, yes, I had samadhi, I have experienced samadhi so many times, or have you heard these things?
On my Kundalini's.
Yeah, and they compare notes on their samadhi experience and all of this. And then if you on YouTube enter samadhi, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but you might get a video, and this would typically be what you'll get, a video of some yogi who's sitting with and normally it would be Padmasana, something like that. And everything's still, and you look, and the eyelids are open just a little bit, and the eyes are pointed up at the third eye. Has anybody ever seen those images?
Yeah.
So the idea that's propagated is that that's samadhi, but that's not samadhi.
There's a video of Yogananda
saying-
Yeah, I know, and that's not samadhi. It might be, but the only way you could actually know for sure, we were having this discussion on Saturday with the group in Colorado. And so we were talking about popular notions that need to be dispelled about yoga, and this is one of them. The ideal is not to sit and withdraw yourself. And what came is, the way you could tell if that person is in samadhi is you yell right next to him as loud as you possibly can, "Fire!" And you see what he does. And if he gets up and he looks around to see how he can help someone get out of the fire, and he's acting in a balanced way, samadhi. And he withdraws further, tamas. And if he jumps and screams, rajas. So samadhi, again, meaning balanced mind, equipoise, equanimity. And seeing what? Seeing the one in all. Seeing the one in all. So common notion must be dispelled, because here in these three sutras is really the discussion of how the one looks. That was the question that Arjuna asked. How can I recognize the one who's in samadhi? How can I recognize the one who's transcended the three gunas? And so it's about this. Here, a little commentary. This was the last of those three. He who, seated like one unconcerned, is not moved by the gunas, who, knowing that the gunas operate, is self-centered and swerves not. And so, why do we repeat again? Because for yogi, this wants to be the ideal. This is the indication of what the ideal is, and we're talking about inside. And so, people won't see you outside unless they yell fire or something like that, and then they'll get to see a glimpse of what the inside looks outside. If somebody calls you a dirty bugger, whatever it is, and watches you, they'll see whether you're really in equipoise or not, right? So God will do this all the time just to check us out. So if you think it happens for some other reason, think again. Recognizing that we're coming to know what the real life really is. And coming to know something about going beyond the artificial life, the life of disturbance, the life of suffering. If we really, really want to do that, then we have to take the ideal and we have to work for the ideal, and that's inner work, right? Yeah. And in that case, we would be so grateful for the name calling and all of the ruffling things that happen. Kartikeya, you would be so happy for the person that comes in the satsang hall when you're trying to meditate and makes noise. You would be so grateful for them. Because you would see, this is what's happening in this inner person. And you would see what your remaining work is. Yeah?
Yeah, practice. Challenge.
Yeah.
So
And what is your practice? You get to see what is your practice. See, Shivdas, we think running away is somehow going to be advantageous. And most of us, we come to yoga as a way of running away. Yeah? I'm included in this. But I realized it wasn't someone else or some problem outside I was running away from. I was needing to run away from my own reactions. I was needing to get away from myself in that way. Huh?
It's a way to fight, perhaps.
It's a way to overcome. It's a way to overcome. To overcome, to transcend. Transcending means overcoming. Going beyond. So transcending meaning going beyond being ruled by the reactive states. Right? being ruled by the gunas. And look, even with sattva guna, the experience of peace, when someone comes along and says something, look at how hard you protect that, and how rajas will come immediately into that, and anger will arise because someone disturbed your sattva. Huh?
That happened to me
Right?
when we're deep in meditation, and we turn on the light and they're pouring like dry beans in a glass jar, like
Yeah.
I was like, nah.
And you see what that is. So that's rajas, anger arising
Yeah,
within the inner.
immediately.
Yeah. And so what have we got there?
Oh,
I had a beautiful example of this exactly 1 year ago today. And it was very interesting because part of me was like observing what was going on. It was like I was able to look down upon what was happening at the time it was happening, and it's really the grace of God, because I never really been in that type of situation before, when I could see it unfolding as it was unfolding and as it was going to continue to unfold. And it was a beautiful lessons for me in just the short 10 or 15 minutes that occurred.
Yeah.
It was exactly March 9th of last year. So very
there we
grateful.
go.
It's interesting this one's
There we
coming
go.
up for me
There we
today.
go. And so it's something that you have the capacity to reflect upon, and that's where the past is helpful.
Yes.
So that you don't have to experience it again in order to see it. But then, of course, the test will come as you do the work to see if you're really transcending it, right? To see.
And I was being, it was like,
Oh, no.
I felt a sense of not wanting to anger. I felt that I could see what was going on, and it was like, no, I'm not being reactive here. I'm going to stay in my center. I'm going to be peaceful no matter what others do around me. I'm staying calm, I'm staying centered, I'm staying balanced. What will happen will happen. And so it was very interesting to have. It's like when you're the people who have near-death experiences and they look down on their bodies.
Yeah.
It was like sort of like that type of experience.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes practicing yogis will think, okay, all I have to do is observe it. But if they're observing it and the person is remaining in the same way, disturbed without any progress, then that's not it either. So equanimity is cultivated, sattva is cultivated, but non-detachment, non-attachment, sorry.
And
Detached.
Swamiji is interesting because I felt one person in the room was feeling very sad, and I picked up on that vibe of the person feeling sad about what was happening, and yet part of me was still undisturbed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was interesting reaction.
So, and that's tamas, that sadness. So, again, tamas is not bad. You just get to see what's playing out. Om. So, in this section, constituted of the following 3 verses, we have an exhaustive picture of the relationship that one of perfection maintains with the things and beings of the world. A man's culture may be a false mask. Many of us can act the part of God as long as situations around us are not too tempting. A man may not be a tyrant as long as he has no power. He may live a quiet life as long as he is poor. He may be above corruption as long as he has no seducing chances. Thus, many good qualities we attribute to many people around are all of falsely painted, superficial beauty, concealing behind its artifice a weak and unhealthy personality. Potential devils stalk about in the world in the borrowed garbs of artificial raiment. Therefore, the real test of a perfect one is not in the jungle or in a cave, but in the marketplace where he is teased by the mischiefs of the world. Christ was never so great as when he was nailed to the cross. The true nature in us will come out only when we are crushed. The fragrance of chandana emerges only when rubbed. Tulasi leaves leave their fragrance only when the fingers crush them. Do we understand the points that's being made here?
Recognize not your body, so you just like, oh, just my
You
body.
get another view of what detachment looks like now.
That was just like in the military. We always say they can change our body, but not our mind.
Oh. So there, that applies. He who, sitting like one unconcerned, is not moved by the gunas, in all his experiences in the world, good, bad, or indifferent, he's unconcerned, since he knows that it is the play of the mind and intellect. In a cinema hall, the tragedies and comedies on the screen need not affect us, since we know that it is a show put up for our entertainment. This does not mean that the seer is totally unconcerned with the happenings of the world. Vyasa is very careful in his choice of expression. He says that the man of perfection looks as though unconcerned. That is to say, he's not in the least agitated, nor does he become hysterical by anything that's happening around him in life. Who, knowing that the gunas operate, he understands that the changes in his own inward personality are all nothing but the kaleidoscopic change of the gunas, and that the world outside changes according to one's mental conditions. So according to your mental conditions, also, the world outside changes. So that sadness was a sadness inside your own mental state. That you see outside. There's no other here. According to our own, and we see this because when the mind is in a place of sattva, everyone outside of you is wonderful. And when the mind is in a place of raja, everyone around you needs to get busy. And when it's in a place of tamas, it's dark and everyone is dark. What we see in the inner person, we tend to see outside. Sometimes over time, sometimes it takes a little while. And the more sattva dominates, the better the world seems to be. Yes?
Thomas also feel like you know the world could be awesome, but you're just so down in the pits that you just feel so hopeless, or something like that.
That's tamas.
Yeah.
Well, you could say you know somehow that the world is awesome, but you're sure not seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Tamas.
I think it was the Geeta yesterday may have made a comment about part of the reason we do kirtan is to train ourselves to pull ourselves out of
we
state.
We discussed. Chanting a mantra, japa, and kirtan are quick tools that bring a quick change in the inner. So he understands that the changes in the inward personality are all nothing but the kaleidoscopic changes, the gunas, and that the world outside changes according to one's mental conditions. A man of true wisdom lives ever fully aware of the technique behind the changes in himself and in the world around him. So he knows how to switch it up. He is self-centered and swerves not. No, this is capital S, centered.
Right.
Capital S, centered. And swerves not. In order to watch the play of the three gunas in himself, he should be an observer from beyond the gunas. Thus, established in his pure spiritual nature, he's able to observe detachedly and enjoy the play of reactions in all of us. It is the nature of the sun to be hot, and therefore the heat of the sun is common to us all. But the things of the world do not produce reactions in everyone the same way. And therefore, it is an interpretation of our mind and intellect which is colored by our past experiences. He who is not looking at the world through these colored goggles of the mind and intellect will be alike in pleasure and pain. Regarding a clod of earth, a precious stone, and gold alike, possession of things is another appetite which the majority of living creatures have. People like to possess and hoard precious stones or gold, but do not care for a clod of mud. But to an awakened person of wisdom, all these possessions are one and the same, and from his estimation, none of them has any real value. The value is the one. Not the thing, not the expression, not the name and the form. It's true. Otherwise, if there were something of real value, by now everyone would have figured it out. But instead, anything that you value, there's someone else who doesn't. Right? So the value, that which is to be valued, is the one. It's the eternal. It's the Satchidananda.
That's why no thing can truly satisfy us, because we are infinite and eternal.
That's correct. That's correct. So no thing can do it. No experience can do it.
Well, I think though dirt could be more valuable than gold because you can grow food.
Children, see, that's a limited perspective, and someone else will disagree with you. So as long as you cling to those limited perspectives, then you suffer. You can still grow food without clinging to it. Huh? Yeah. Oh. So you can use all of the implements for what their purpose is, what their limited purpose is, without clinging to them. Is it so?
Yes, that
Okay.
is just temporary.
Oh. Children collect peacock feathers, shells, marbles, broken glass bangles, old stamps, shapely stones, etc., from the roadside or from waste paper baskets, and with extreme possessiveness, they keep them as their precious possessions. But as they grow, without a regret, they throw them away, and the younger ones in the family accept them with gratitude as a precious inheritance from their elders. Similarly, a man living his egocentric life of desires for possessions may value gold and precious stones, but to an awakened one, in his sense of infinitude, these limited possessions, hugged on to by lesser minds, have no charm at all. The same towards things dear and things not dear. In our relationship with others, where there is an agreeable nature, we come to love it dearly, while wherever there is a disagreeable nature, we hate it. Love and hate, dear and not dear, are all our reactions to the agreeable and disagreeable nature of things or situations. These reactions are no doubt from levels of the mind. One who is standing, you see, Shivadas, the situation you bring up from 1 year ago, you see, it's only to the limited mind that's even holding on to that. You see?
That's obvious.
Yeah. Oh. These reactions are no doubt from the levels of the mind. One who is standing on windy shores wearing a thick coat will not feel the cold that another must feel when, in his nakedness, he's dipping in the sea. The cold waters come in contact with the skin of the naked man, and he experiences the discomforts, while the man on the shore, comfortably warm in his coat, knows no cold. The average man plunged in identification with his own mind and intellect suffers the world and interprets it as agreeable or disagreeable, and brings down upon himself a lot of confusions and problems. The man of steady wisdom is he whose equilibrium is not disturbed by the onslaught of things and circumstances of the world, whether they be dear or not dear. Same in censure and in praise. A man of perfection is the same in censure and praise. The experience of a dream cannot contribute either joy or sorrow to the one who is awakened. He might have been a beggar insulted by the entire society in the dream world, or might have been an adored Raja ruling a vast empire in his dream. But when he wakes up, neither the praise he received as a Raja nor the censure he suffered as a beggar can leave any reactions upon him. Awakened from the dream, the man of wisdom evaluates the blame and praise of the world outside and finds them both utterly insignificant. In the above four beautiful chosen phrases, Vyasa has indicated some of the main conditions of life in which the ordinary man comes to eke out his joys and sorrows. Pleasure and pain, good and bad possessions, agreeable and disagreeable experiences, joys and sorrows provided by praise and censure are some of the conditions of life by which we get entangled in the web of agitations and sorrows. So does that help with ideal? Can you see? The common approach in the inner person is to want to renounce what is disagreeable and not to renounce what is agreeable. You see it? And you see how deeply this ego self will fight to protect that status quo. And how continually there will be blame for others who don't have any existence for our suffering, our discomfort. You see it? So does it help you to see what's to be renounced?
I have a question.
Oh dear.
Real-time question. What will be ideal for a parent whose child doesn't want to eat what they're supposed to eat?
To be firm with them, but not to be disturbed. Because it's simply the gunas playing out. And it's simply a learning process happening. There's nothing wrong. Anything that the child might do, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing worthy of punishment. But there's much that needs correction. And correction with a steady hand is best. Yes? Correction with a steady hand is best. So, and a non-disturbed inner. So the more you grasp what's being discussed here and are able to embody it and to honor the practices that help to cultivate it, then the more you're steady. Yes? And in the moment. And able to act in accordance with what's happening instead of to react according only to the conditioning. Oh? Okay. So again, you say ideal. Ideal. You say ideal. If you can really take it as an ideal, you know that it can be done. And so you bring your practice of life into alignment with the ideal. Kartikeya, would you please read the first? Actually, we don't do a lot. God does almost everything. Nature does almost everything. The only thing we do is on the inside. The only thing we actually do is on the inside. And that's this permitter role. We choose, we choose.
Practical wisdom, see nothing, look at nothing but your goal ever shining before you.
So when it becomes important, then it's at the top of the list. And whatever is at the top of the list is what you'll do. Right? Yeah. So we take some time with this morning because we've been building up to this in terms of relating to the gunas and the ability to see them and having some understanding of the philosophy of it. Now it's the practice. Now it's the practice. And Bhagavad Gita study is nothing if we don't take practice from it. And if we all say, okay, that's fine, everyone else can deal with that, then we miss the point. The question is, what practice can I take from it? And in order to practice something, you have to have a goal. Right? Why do you practice?
I've been here with pretty much no goal for the most part the majority of this time, but now I've kind of found one.
Good.
That's nice.
Good. Because now you know why you're doing something. And it gives you a rudder to be able to check in on it, right? Yeah.
Compass.
A compass, yeah. Now you carry a compass. When you have an ideal, now you carry a compass. And if you don't let go of it, you will invariably succeed. If you don't let go of the ideal, you will succeed. I speak from the point of being a quote-unquote successful business person and then a yogi. Right? The goals that we had in business, we never let go of. And the ones we never let go of, we always accomplished. Every single one of them.
And then it wasn't good enough.
It wasn't enough. That wasn't it. Actually, it was going the wrong direction inside.
180.
Yeah. But then you apply the same principle. I was called a visionary. So what does that mean? You just see the goal. That's what it means. And you see the way to the goal. You see how to get to the goal. Right? And you visualize yourself in possession of the goal. You see, we're dealing with Vedanta. The good news is you already have whatever goal you could choose. But by visualizing it and by practicing, living in a way that's in alignment with it, then you can not just have it, but reveal it. Reveal it. And so this equanimity, this equipoise that's being discussed is something that is a soul quality. It already exists. So it's a matter of unveiling it. And when we recognize what's veiling it, we see attachment to these qualities of nature. And what we were just discussing in terms of wanting to hold on to that which is pleasant, which is pleasing, which feels good. Right? And to run away from that which is unpleasant. To avoid it. And here what's being prescribed is, no, whatever comes to you, be present and attached to the one, to the unity. That's the ideal. Oh. Okay. Comments, questions, anything else?
A comment about
Yes, dear.
further down where it says each day accept everything that's coming from God. That's a state of being.
It's a state of being.
Can we practice that? In other words, fake it till you make it?
Yeah. What you do to practice it is you keep reminding yourself this. You can keep reminding yourself this. You can keep reminding yourself it's the play of the gunas. Or both. Or both. You know, the mental repetition of mantra helps so greatly with any of these practices. So it helps to purify the background of the mind. Helps to bring more sattva into the mind. But that in and of itself is not enough. There needs to be a more active part of the practice, which is when there is discomfort arising, we want to be able to be present for it. And afterwards, we want to be, if we lose ourselves, to anger, hatred, fear, whatever, judgment, whatever it is, then afterwards we want to be able to recognize that we have, and once again learn from it and take the necessary steps to transcend that, to go beyond it. You won't catch it unless you have an ideal. But if you have an ideal, if you have a resolve, then you've set up the proper conditions in the relationship between the soul and the person for the person to be reminded when they transgress. This is the banana story that I share sometimes. So with a strong, with a strong resolve, a strong ideal, then you might lose yourself. Anger might come, etc., etc. But invariably afterwards, you'll remember, I lost myself, and that wasn't what I wanted. Correct? And now what do? And there are two choices. And you could say, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, you can say like this. But the choices are either to resolve again firmly, hold on to the ideal, or to say to yourself, this is tamas, I'm not capable, I can't do it. That's just the way I am. Right? Which we all have a lot of history of. That's tamas, and that's how tamas is asserting in the person. Okay, we should close. But that's it. It's a matter of seeing. All of this, all of the work of yoga, Vedanta, the study of the nature of truth, the neti, all of this is to get us intellectually to recognize I don't know, but that which knows is here. But that which knows is here. So that's an intellectual realization. That's a submission to the light, or surrender to the light. But we can also, through Vedanta, practice in order to recognize that all is the light, that everything here is the light. Yes? And all of the other practices of yoga are fitting with it to help us to get to the place where we recognize that which is real and beyond the gunas and see the gunas as they're playing out. But hold on to the real, not to what's playing out. Yeah? Even here, not to what's playing out.
You had three other examples of the gunas. It was light, action, and then what was tamas?
Normally we would say darkness. I don't remember the inactivity or darkness. We can look again and see which the other word he used was. Okay, let's close with final prayers in Arati, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyam Amritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyam Amritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyam Amritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashitu Kapapave Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, Mrityurmamritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. On behalf of Sacred Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Okay, let's rise for our tea.